In the middle of the night in Georgia, former Navy SEALs Michael and Russell are discussing their next job with Russell's ex-cop brother Gabe. They must steal a safe deposit box from a bank containing important information related to a Jewish-Russian mafia boss, and they agree they'll need the help from corrupt cops. Later they meet with officers Marcus and Franco to make a plan. Meanwhile, Russian crime lady Irina meets with two of her men, who have brought their latest victims in the trunk of their car. They've clearly been tortured, and one of the criminals presents Irina a bag with all their teeth, which gets thrown in the trunk before it's locked up. 2 weeks later, the gang is getting their weapons and masks ready in a van that Russell is driving. He parks around the corner and the other four rush into the bank, shooting in the air before bringing down the guards. The alarms are already ringing, so they only have 3 minutes to pull this off before the cops arrive. Gabe sees the bank manager trying to escape and goes after him to capture him. Then they show him some pictures of his home and his family to force him to cooperate. They take the manager to the vault and show him the number they want. After the guy takes out his keys and puts them on the lock, Michael pushes him off to open the box himself. Gabe notices a pile of cash nearby and takes some in his bag before they finally add the box. On their way out, they lock the door of the vault and throw the keys to the manager. Gabe is the first one to leave the bank and rushes to hide in a car while Russell gives him instructions on what path to take because he's tapping into the police's scanner. When the other three come out too, Michael puts 2 flashbang grenades on the door and the people run to hide in the vault. The trio joins Gabe in the car and they take off while Russell navigates for them through the radio. They travel calmly for a while, but suddenly a security dye pack that came with the money explodes in the bag. The car fills with blinding red smoke, making it hard to drive. They try to open a door to let out the smoke, only to end up hitting another vehicle and causing an accident that blocks the road, which leave Russell behind. The thieves decide to get out and open fire to force the people to run away, hitting the window of a guy that refuses to leave until he does so. Russell watches from afar and sees a wounded woman, which wasn't supposed to happen. Once they've stolen a new vehicle, they activate a bomb inside their previous one and leave before it explodes. The cops soon arrive and Russell leaves as well. Moments later, at a secluded area, the group drops all the stained equipment in the car. Marcus and Franco yell at Gabe for taking the money since it was obviously bait for dumb thieves to grab the dye. Franco even takes out his gun during the scolding, but Michael threatens him into putting it away. Once they're done, they shoot the escape car's gas tank and light it on fire before leaving. Later, Michael goes to a meatpacking plant, where Irina's men are carrying their victims in the meat trucks. Michael gives them the box to put an end to their mission. Meanwhile, Detective Allen goes to the bank to investigate the robbery and scolds the manager for not being careful about what he posts on social media. At the same time, Allen's nephew and former Marine Chris goes to the station for his first day of work. Soon Marcus also arrives and notices he still has some dye on his shoe and pants. The commanding officer partners Chris with Marcus, who complains about it and gets ignored. They patrol the town together but only take care of silly things like a woman being inappropriate in public. In his apartment, Michael uses a burner phone to call Franco and tell him they'll see each other in 2 days. Then he burns the SIM card in the microwave. Afterward, Michael goes to the meat plant, where Irina's men pat him down before letting him see her. Her nephew Felix runs to hug Michael, revealing he's his dad. Michael expects to be paid for the robbery, but Irina reveals that there is another mission to do first. When Michael tries to refuse, Irina threatens to not let him see Felix again. As Irina tells him about the next job, Michael notices a room full of federal agents, which worries him. Later, Irina calls her husband the Jewish-Russian mafia boss, who is currently in a Russian jail. He says that Michael refusing to do the job is unacceptable and advises Irina to hurt Michael. That night, Russell gets a call from Michael saying they need to meet immediately. When Russell gets in his car, Irina's thug appears behind him and suffocates him with a plastic bag. Franco, Gabe, Michael, and Marcus meet up. An argument ensues over Irina's lack of payment and Michael tells them about the feds he saw, which means they need to behave. At that moment, they see Russell's car hitting a wall and rush to check on him as a second car drives away. They find Russell with the bag and covered in severe wounds, meaning he doesn't have much time left. Marcus holds a furious Gabe back while Michael shoots Russell to end his suffering. Michael tries calling Irina through the phone of her sister and Felix's mother Elena, but both women refuse to answer. Meanwhile, Alan and his partner Detective Trina watch footage of the robbery and can tell some of the thieves of army training. In the morning, the group discusses how to pull off the next job, which is a heist at the Department of Homeland Security. They'll need at least 10 minutes, which is impossible because the police shows up in 3. Franco has an idea. They could do a 999. This entails killing a cop, which would send all the police to the location of the incident. Marcus doesn't like the idea of having to kill a fellow officer, but Franco is happy to do it. In the end, they agree this is their only choice. Later, Marcus and Chris are called to a murder scene, where a car is burning down and 3 heads have been found on top of another vehicle. Franco is also there and treats Chris like a rookie, so Chris proves him wrong by translating the threat on the glass. Then he goes to interrogate some gang members, only for Luis to insult him and try to attack him. Chris blocks him and arrests him, causing the other cops to come for the rest of the gang. Furious, Marcus pulls Chris aside and scolds him for complicating things. Sometime later, Elena brings Felix to Michael's home for an allowed scheduled visit. They're late and Michael knows Irina is behind this. The next day, Michael drops Felix at Irina's and uses the chance to yell at her for killing Russell. Irina is unbothered and reminds him to do his job. The next time the group meets at a sauna and Marcus tells them their victim should be Chris because Alan will move the entire department for his nephew. When they go home, Gabe admits he doesn't like the idea of killing a random guy that hasn't done anything and begs to change the plan. Michael snaps and says they have no choice before pushing Gabe out of his car. The next day, Alan meets with a person in the naughty business. He bribes her with some money and learns that a working girl named Leah had taken too many uppers, causing her to share a secret. Her boyfriend had just committed a bank robbery. Meanwhile, Marcus and Chris enter the gang's territory. While Marcus talks to some locals to gather information, Chris tries to scold two teen gang members for their lifestyle, telling them to go back to school. Afterward, they secretly follow a criminal known as Termite, the main suspect behind the murder. They watch him pretend a bag of illegal powder is a baby to move it around in a baby carriage, hiding it in a car to drive off. Moments later, Chris gathers a team of cops to search Termite's apartment. Before they can enter, Termite opens fire at them from the window, so the officers fire back before taking the stairs. As soon as they break the door down, Termite fires at them again before running into another room to avoid being shot back. As more cops surround the building, the team searches the apartment and find Termite's baby on a bed. Then they open the closet and find a hole in the wall that takes them to the neighboring apartment, where Termite keeps all his security cameras and illegal goods. He isn't around, so the team goes downstairs, where Termite shoots at them again before running away. The cops start chasing after Termite, but as they run through the streets, other gang members like Luis fire at them to help their friend. This allows Termite to hide in a car and open fire as well. A gunfight ensues with car windows breaking all over the place. Some cops manage to force a few gang members into running, so they chase after them while Chris and Marcus continue to exchange fire with Termite. Suddenly a gun falls with no bullets, so Chris comes out of hiding, but this is a trick from Termite, who has a second gun. Chris quickly gets shot and Termite manages to escape. Marcus runs to check on Chris, who is fine thanks to the bulletproof vest. Afterward, Marcus goes after Termite, losing time when he gets stuck in a fence. When he's feeling better, Chris moves to and finds Marcus and Termite fighting over a gun. Chris waits for an opening and shoots Termite in the head. Then Marcus shoots Termite again out of frustration. Termite's death triggers a riot in town, so more cops have to come and arrest a bunch of gang members. Meanwhile, Michael is at a restaurant with Irina, expecting to see Felix. However, Irina says Felix isn't coming and hands Michael her phone. Elena and Felix are on the beaches of Tel Aviv and Michael barely gets to talk to them before the call ends. Irina did this on purpose to remind him who is in control. She gives him important details about the Department of Homeland Security building and mentions they have 24 hours to finish the job. Depending how well the job goes will dictate how long Felix will be away on vacation. In the meantime, Gabe is so depressed over his brother's death that he keeps making his addiction worse with Leah's company. Later, Chris and Marcus are at a naughty club with other officers when they're suddenly approached by Gabe, who asks to talk to Marcus. At first, Marcus plays along and takes him outside, but then he furiously pushes Gabe down some steps and punches him as he scolds him for approaching him in front of other cops. Gabe tries to complain about the plan again, remembering a Marcus he used to work with and pointing out he wouldn't kill an innocent cop either. Furious over hearing the truth, Marcus repeatedly punches him again. At that moment, a suspicious Chris and another cop come out, so Gabe asks if that's him, but Marcus forces him to leave. When Chris demands an explanation, Marcus says it was just a source he used to get info from. In the meantime, Alan follows the intel to search Leah's house and even consumes some of the powder he finds there. Fingerprints allows them to find Gabe on the system, learning he was a cop for 3 years before he was dismissed for questionable shooting. Later, Alan sets up a fake dealer to catch Leah when she tries to buy more uppers. He takes her to his car and consumes her powder until Leah shares information about Gabe. Soon Gabe is followed by Trina, who finds him parking at Chris's house. She informs Alan of this and he immediately calls for backup. Hearing the police sirens, Gabe jumps over a fence to escape. Alan rushes to check on Chris and his family, showing them a picture of Gabe to see if they know him. At that moment, Alan gets a call with more information. Gabe had a brother called Russell who worked with someone named Michael as private military contractors. They were suspected of arms smuggling with the Russian mafia, but the case was dropped after 4 witnesses went missing. The arms smuggling connects the guys to Irina, and Alan's captain wants them to go after her. Eventually, Franco calls Michael to ask him to do something about Gabe because he's under surveillance. Moments later, Gabe is hiding in a hotel and receives a picture of Leah wounded and tied up. He calls the number and discovers Michael has kidnapped her. Michael threatens to kill Leah if Gabe doesn't disappear immediately. Once a terrified Gabe promises to leave town, Michael hangs up and throws the phone in the toilet before leaving. The next day, Alan learns from Trina and the other cops that Gabe has disappeared. Michael hasn't been at his apartment in days, and that the courts denied their warrant for surveillance against Irina. This causes him to snap at them, demanding better results. Sometime later, Franco and Michael wait in a van outside the Homeland Security offices. Meanwhile, Marcus takes Chris to an abandoned building supposedly to meet with an informant. The place is really dark, and when Chris searches a room, he loses sight of Marcus. Chris goes looking for his partner at the same time that Luis enters the building with a gun. In another room, Marcus has a breakdown over his guilt. Chris keeps on searching and suddenly finds Gabe, who tries to explain the plan, but Chris keeps yelling at him to put the gun down. At that moment, Luis finds them and Gabe warns Chris, who moves away to hide right before Luis opens fire. After shooting a bunch of bullets, Luis escapes by jumping through a window. Chris comes out and discovers Gabe has been shot on the neck, so he calls for backup before yelling to get Marcus' attention. Marcus soon arrives and realizes what happened, so he gets his gun ready to kill them both. Gabe sees this and opens fire too, causing Marcus and Gabe to shoot each other at the same time. Chris opens fire to finish killing Gabe and checks on Marcus, who doesn't have much time left. Then Chris calls the station again, announcing a 999. Soon Michael and Franco hear the 999 on the police scanner and proceed with the plan. They move the van to the entrance and shoot the guard as soon as he tries to stop them. Then they tie him to the railing and get inside, thanks to the password Irina had told them. The duo moves through the window, knocking out 2 more guards with electric shotgun shells. They also tie these men up and even get ready some explosives. Meanwhile, Alan learns Chris called with a 999 and thinks he's in danger, so he makes the entire station move and drives like a maniac on his way to the scene. Eventually he receives a call about the robbery at home security, but he thinks Chris is his priority and continues to drive like crazy, hitting other cars in the process. Since the call keeps coming, Alan sends a small team to the robbery. Back to Michael and Franco. They've put the explosives on the guards' bodies and used them as shields so they can move through the building. The other guards see them but can't react because just one bullet could trigger the explosives. The duo forces the other guards to cooperate and prove they're serious. They blow up one of their hostages' leg. Terrified, a guard explains they can't help because the vault is on a time lock they can't override. The duo decides to use explosives on the door and manage to get inside. While Michael opens the safe they need with a blowtorch, Franco hears on the radio that a call has been sent out for them, meaning they have 7 minutes to finish this. Luckily the safe opens fast and the duo get what they need before rushing out of the building with their hostages. There's a SWAT team nearby and they watch how Michael and Franco get in the van, waiting until they drive away from the guards with the explosives to open fire. Both of them get wounded by the bullets, yet they still manage to escape. As a cover, Franco calls his boss and says he's heard about the 999, so he'll be there soon. At the abandoned building, a helicopter arrives to take Marcus to the hospital. After hitting more cars with his own, Alan arrives and immediately checks on his nephew. He hears the whole story and learns that a SWAT team has Luis surrounded. Chris also shares that he had seen Gabe at the bar some days ago. Soon Franco arrives to help with the investigation and Alan notices he's limping, which makes him suspicious. In the evening, Michael meets Irina and gives her the stolen box, which she opens with a stolen key from the bank. Then Michael demands to see his son and yells at her, causing her guards to react. He immediately punches a man down and checks the car, only to find it empty. The other guard comes to knock him down and after stepping on his hand, the guy shoots a gun near his ear, temporarily deafening him. Irina admits she really wants to kill Michael, but Elena and Felix would never forgive her. She asks him to take the money and leave, forbidding him from seeing Felix again. Michael brought a gift for the boy, so Irina at least agrees to give it to Felix as a goodbye present from his dad. After she and her men drive away, Michael activates the last explosive, which turns out to be hidden in the toy and makes Irina's car explode. When he drives away, he passes by the burning car to check everyone is dead. At the hospital, a fellow cop tells Chris that Luis was killed by SWAT. Chris goes to the morgue to check Luis' belongings and finds a note with the abandoned building's address and a time, concluding Luis had been there to kill Chris. Moments later, Michael is pulled over by a cop, but it's just Franco. Michael confirms Irina finally paid them and Franco explains Marcus is alive, but he promises to kill him like he killed Leah. Suddenly Franco takes out his gun and shoots Michael 3 times, killing him and taking all the money for himself. The next day, Chris goes to the gang's neighborhood and asks around to learn Marcus was seen talking to Luis on the day he was shot. Afterward, Chris goes to see Alan and theorizes that Marcus set him up to be killed. Alan agrees, but they lack proof so they can't do much. Later, Alan gets a call saying they've found Leah's body and he tells Chris, sharing his new theory. The 4th guy is a corrupt cop who is getting rid of the evidence. Next, Alan calls Trina and makes her check the records to see which officer found Leah's body. Meanwhile, Chris visits an unconscious Marcus in the hospital just to insult him. At that moment, Franco comes in and tells Chris they still need a full statement at the precinct. The duo gets in the elevator and Chris gets a call from Alan, who tells him Franco is dirty. Chris pretends it's his wife and quickly hangs up. When they get to the parking lot, they split to get to their cars. As soon as Franco gets in, he sees a tie hanging around the mirror and Alan on the backseat. Both men pull their guns out and shoot at the same time. Franco immediately dies and Alan is heavily wounded. Chris hears the shots and makes a call while Alan smokes a cigarette, leaving it up to interpretation if he bleeds out or not.